Hello, I'm sure you've run into this issue. So you make yourself a nice scene in Blender and then you import it into Godot, but it doesn't look right. For example, we see that this texture is scaled the wrong size. These are supposed to be back face culling, but for some reason Godot decided to make them front face culling. We want to fix that. And so what you might try to do is make a new inherited scene where you can change the UV scale here, but it doesn't let me. This is because you can't actually edit this. Another thing you might try is clicking make local, and then I make all the rest of this local as well. And now the whole entire thing is in here, so I can edit my properties like I want, and that's all fixed. But now I have an issue where if I ever go back to Blender and I make a change, for example by moving this down, and then I go to re-export it, it doesn't update. So this doesn't work. We need to use the original model and have it apply the changes we want without changing the other stuff so it can automatically re-import. Luckily, Godot provides a solution to us with the advanced import settings. By using the advanced import settings, we can modify many properties as it's being imported, and when it gets re-imported, it will apply these changes again. So we can have changes made in Blender while have the additional changes made in Godot. For example, we can make it generate a collision mesh when it gets imported into Godot. However, importantly, we cannot change anything for materials, so we're kind of stuck. However, we can get around this with the power of import scripts. If we assign this script to the model, then every time that it gets re-imported, it will now apply the changes made by the script. And the script changes can be much more advanced than those allowed by the advanced import settings. I wrote this little script that can do many different things from the Blender side. So now we can make the changes for the Godot in the Blender. We can set the import script in the import settings. Additionally, we can go to project settings, import defaults, scene, and then set the import script path to be an import script. So by default, all new models will use this script when they're importing. Now once we re-import, nothing happens, but we now have the additional functionality of being able to make more changes in Blender. Here's how it works. In Blender, if you scroll down to the very bottom of many of these different tabs, we can find this section called Custom Properties. Custom Properties are just extra data we can save on a data block in Blender, but then we'll be able to use this extra data on the Godot side. Here's how we do it with my script. So we create a new custom property, and we name it Import, and then the name of the property we want to change. In Godot, the name of this property is UV1 scale. So I enter import underscore UV1 scale. And since this is a vector3 property, we need to change the data type to float array. But now I can change this property to the value that I want to have be assigned in Godot. Now if I save this and I export it again, I need to make sure that I include custom properties. So then the extra information gets included in the GLB file that gets exported. And look, the import script detected those changes and fixed it. So how did it work? The custom property gets loaded as metadata, which then my script will read and assign it to the place where it belongs. Now let's fix the other issues. For example, how the backface culling on these grass are disabled. If I open the model in the editor, I can go to one of the grass nodes, find its material, look under its settings, and see that its cull mode is set to disabled. Cull mode, however, is an enum. With enums, we use integer types. The value used for the integer is based upon the order inside of the enum. For the enum cull mode, cull back, which is the one we want, is element 0. So we're going to use 0 inside of Blender. So now make sure you close this before you re-import it. Let's go back to Blender, find the material for the grass, add a custom property, name it import cull mode, and like I said, this is type integer, and I want this to be 0. Now let's export it again. Right now there's a bug, I think, in Godot where it doesn't update the materials when it's re-importing it. So, but it works every other time, so I just need to restart the editor real fast. And there we go, it's all fixed. One other thing you might want to do when you're importing is use multi-meshes. If we look at how this scene is working under the hood, we basically just have a ton of different grass nodes. which can be bad for performance. The better solution is use Multimesh, but there's no way to import it by default in Godot. With my import script, there is. How it works depends upon if you're using geometry nodes or not. For my grass, I am. How it works fundamentally is that I generate a bunch of points where the grass should go, and then I use the instance on points node to place the grass there. Make sure that the last node in the chain is the instance on points, and you do not have any modifiers after the geometry node setup. It might work if you don't do that, but probably not. The way to make it use of Multimesh is by simply adding the Multimesh custom property on the object data. The name of this property should be Multimesh, and it doesn't matter what data type or value. Make sure this is on the object properties. Different properties affect different things. My script works for object properties, material properties, and mesh properties. So let's see if this works. Let's export again. Make sure that in your export settings, data scene graph geometry node instances is turned on, and data scene graph GPU instances is turned off, and data mesh apply modifiers is enabled. It looks the same, but let's see how it works under the hood. And there we go. We have a single multi-mesh that handles all of these graphs. This means it will still be performant even if I massively increase the number of grass. Let's go 100 times as many. Boom, tons of grass, lightning fast performance. Finally, I want to show off using multi-mesh without using geometry nodes. Consider this setup. I have multiple different monkeys, but I want them all to be in a multi-mesh. You do this by creating an empty, then give the empty a number of children, which will be the instances. You should not give any of these any further children, and these should all be the same mesh. Now finally give the empty an object data property of multi-mesh. Now when we export one last time, let me load in Godot, we got our monkeys, and they are also using a multi-mesh. Finally, you can download the script from a link in the description. Hope this helps. Bye!